This is lesson 6.2 out of the Decimals and Fractions book. If you're in my class, this lesson is going to be on page 52 in your math notebook. And lesson 6.2 is titled, I'm gonna have to write kind of small, it's a little long, Area and Perimeter with decimals. So decimals tells me that I'm going to be measuring in the metric system. So millimeters, centimeters, meters, kilometers, the metric system when we're measuring with decimals. All right. Okay, so warm up for lesson 6.2. Four problems. The first one is 8.7 times 8.7. Ooh, I should say that correctly. 8 7/10 times 8 7/10. Number 2, 12 3/10 times 5 6/10. Number 3, 5 2/10 times 3 3/10. And number 4, 3 4/10 plus 5 3/10 plus 3 4/10 plus 5 3/10. All right, so obviously for this lesson, they want to make sure you remember how to multiply decimal numbers and how to add decimal numbers. So if you're not sure, if you're feeling unsteady here, you need a refresher, go back to lesson 1.6 for adding and subtracting decimals and lesson 2.2 for multiplying decimals. Okay, so our I can statement for this lesson is I can find the perimeter and area I can find the perimeter and area of polygons using decimals. I'm going to put here the metric system. Okay? By the end of this lesson, you should be able to find the perimeter and area of polygon shapes using decimals. That's the metric system. All right, so dark green pencil. It's the end of our warm-up section. And let's get down to our lesson. All right, we have just one notes glue in, and I'm putting it in the far upper left corner under my green line. It is titled Area Formulas again, but we're kind of reviewing on this, how we find the area of squares, rectangles, and triangles, because we'll be doing that, but this time using decimals instead of fractions. All right, so reviewing those area formulas again. I'm going to give it a little highlight here. And what are the formulas we're reviewing? Well, the area for a rectangle is area equals length times width. And with my pencil, I'm just going to write right here, A equals length times width. Remember that we talked about that little cursive L so that we can not get it confused with a numeral 1. All right, area of a triangle is area times 1/2 times base times height, or A equals 1/2 times base times height. And as we talked about in the last lesson, you don't have to have those multiplication symbols. If they were all together with no operation, it would automatically mean multiplication. An area of a square is area equals side by side, And so we can write that as area equals S times S, or area equals S squared. All right, that's the formulas we've been working with when we were working with the customary units, inches and such. Same formulas when we're working with the metric system, doesn't matter, okay? So this lesson will go pretty fast because we've pretty much done all of this before if you've been doing the lessons leading up to this. Now it's just a matter of we're using decimal numbers instead of fractions, okay? So I'm going to start over here with my black pencil writing. Find the perimeter. Find the perimeter and area of each polygon, each shape down here. Each polygon. All right, and then I'm going to take my red pencil. Here's where you got to really start paying attention. It's going to get mixed together. What are they asking me to find? The perimeter or the area? Oh, they're asking me to find the perimeter and the area. So I'm going to emphasize that to myself and make sure that I don't lose track of what it is they're asking me to find. All right, so I need to draw, this time using my centimeters side, a little rectangle here. So I want my rectangle to be, centimeter side. I want my rectangle to be 2 8/10 long. So it's going to be 2 centimeters, and then 8 of these little marks, 8 of these little millimeter marks will give me 2 8/10. Okay? And then I want it to be 1 2/10 wide. So 1 centimeter plus 2 of the little millimeter marks will give me 1 2/8. Okay? So as exact as you can be, doesn't have to be super exact. We'll be labeling this, so we'll know what we intend it to be. And there. All right, well that matched up pretty good. So I will use my dark blue pencil to emphasize the perimeter of my shape here. This is the perimeter of my polygon, my rectangular polygon. Perimeter. And then I'm going to use my orange to shade in the area of my polygon. The area inside the perimeter of my rectangle is area. Okay, so the blue is perimeter and the orange is area, the grid inside the perimeter. All right, I need to label it, and I remember that I wanted my my width here to be 1 2/10 centimeter, and my length is 2 8/10 centimeter. Okay. All right, so now I have my shape and I can find my perimeter and area. All right, so it doesn't matter which one you do first. I'm just going to do area up here because it fits better. All right, so first step is always write the formula. A equals length times width. Second step is to plug in known values. Well, I know what my length is. It's 2 8/10, so I'll put that right here. And then I know what my width is. It's 1 2/10. All right, so now here's where something changes for me when I start working with decimals. If I use the little dot here to mean multiplication, sometimes when things get sloppy and you're not putting the dot far enough down or in the middle, it can get difficult to tell, wait a minute, is that supposed to be a decimal mark or a multiplication mark? So when I move to decimals in formulas, this is where I move to parentheses, meaning multiplying. Now, we'll go over this again in another lesson, but we know that the tiny little x means multiply. That's what we learned first. We've learned now that a dot up in the middle here means multiply, and that's what we've used when we've been working with fractions. But putting a number in parentheses next to a number or next to another number also in parentheses means multiply. So it looks like this, 2.8 times 1.2, 2 8/10 times 1 2/10. That in the parentheses right next to that number means multiply. And so you're going to see me do that, and don't get confused. That just simply means when I put it in that parentheses, multiply this number times that number. And now we won't confuse a little dot here with decimal or multiply. What was that supposed to mean? Right? So now over to the side, I'm going to have to do a little scratching out here because I don't know what 2 8/10 multiplied by 1 2/10 is in my head. So this is where you've got to go back to lesson 2.2 if you can't remember how to multiply these. So I got 2.8 multiplied by 1.2. 2 times 8 is 16. 2 times 2 is 4, plus the 1 I had to carry is 5. 1 times 8, 1 times 2. Add them up, I get 6. 13, carry the 1, 3. I have 2 places that I've got to bring my decimal in. So my answer is 3.36. 3 and 36 hundredths. So 3 and 36 hundredths of a centimeter, and that's squared because we this is area. We're multiplying 2 numbers. That makes it squared for area. So my final answer, the area of that rectangular polygon, is 3 and 36 hundredths of a centimeter squared. All right. Now I still got to find the perimeter of that. And perimeter is simply adding up all the sides, remember? In fact, I'm gonna circle this and underline this A. Okay, that's my area. All right, so perimeter equals, I can add up, I mean, there's a couple of different ways you can do it. You can just have 4 long numbers and add them up, or you can do 3 2-digit numbers. And that's the way I'm gonna do it, mostly just for space. It doesn't matter. I can add 2 and 2.8 plus 2.8 plus 1.2 plus 1.2 and have 4 numbers in a long string. Or I can add up 1 and 2/10 plus 1 and 2/10, which gives me 2/4. Then I can add up the other side, 2 and 8/10 plus 2 and 8/10 gives me 5 and 6/10, and then I can add these 2 numbers together to give me the total perimeter. 2.4 plus 5.6 gives me 8.0. So then my answer down here is going to be, I don't need that 0 there, right? That's, oops, sorry, I hope I'm in the frame. There we go. Don't need that 0. So my answer becomes 8 centimeters. Now, we are measuring the perimeter. That's the area around. So that's just a linear measurement. Don't put squared on that one. Perimeter is not squared. It's linear, all in one line. So just whatever the measurement is. So the perimeter of that rectangle is 8 centimeters. Okay? All right, now to separate this problem from another one that I'm going to do, I'm just going to do a little light green mark here and separate that across, because now we're going to move over to this side over here and talk about doing the same thing with a triangle. So my triangle is going to have a height of 2.3 centimeters. So here's how I'm going to do it. So 2 3/10 centimeters, and I'm gonna make this triangle begin right on its height beyond this red line here. So 2 and 1 2 3 marks. 2 and 1 2 3 marks. All right. Then I want it to have a width of a base of oh, I'm so sorry, I read my notes wrong. Just a second, quick backup. Okay, height, I didn't want it to be that. Okay, the height is going to be 1 9/10, so 1 9 millimeters past, so almost to the 2 centimeter mark. There we go, that's what I want. And then the base was 2 3/10. I'm going to try and get it centered here. 2 3/10. There we go. That should be about right. 2 3/10. All right. So now my sides I'm going to connect them all up. And it might not measure exact, and that's fine because we're going to label what the sides are. And whatever the label says is fact, not actual, because we can't draw everything to scale. All right, so the base of, I'm going to give the perimeter a outline. Perimeter is this part right here. I'm going to give it an outline so it stands out. That's the perimeter of my triangle. Okay. And then I'm going to do some marking on the inside to show the height. Remember, height is from the base to its opposite vertex or corner. So that would be base up to this corner is height. So a little dotted line is what's necessary here, with a box right here, a little square, showing me that this is a right angle. This is perpendicular to this dotted line up to the top vertex. So my height, drawing into here, is 1 9/10 of a centimeter. Okay, my base is 2 3/10 of a centimeter, and this line on my triangle is 2 2/10 of a centimeter, and so it is here as well, 2 2/10 of a centimeter. All right, so now we know what the lengths are of all three lines of our triangle, and we know what the height of the triangle is, which is not the same as one of these sides. Okay, all right, so let's shade area here nice and light. Remember that the orange is area and the blue is perimeter, and we're still being asked to find both. So area equals 1/2 times base times height. We write down the formula first, always. All right, now we plug in the known values. 1/2 times base is, oh, that's right, dealing with decimals, I'm going to drop that dot for multiply. Okay, base is 2.3, 2 3/10, and the height right here is 1 9/10. Okay, all right, so now I've got to multiply these out. And actually, you know, I copied down the 1/2, but we're not dealing in fractions right now, are we? No, we're dealing with decimals. Okay, so what's the decimal equivalent of 1/2? 0.5. So let's go ahead and put that in there. Okay, so it looks like I'm going to have to do a little bit of scratch work over here because I don't know what 5/10 times 2 3/10 times 1 9/10 is in my head. So I'll start out here with 2.3 times 1.9. 9 times 3 is 27. 9 times 2 is 18, plus 2 is 20. 1 times 3 is 3. 1 times 2 is 2. Add them up and I get 7, 3, and 4. 2 places for my decimals. All right, now I've got to multiply it by 0.5. Am I in the frame here? There we go. 0.5. So 5 times 7 is 35. 5 times 3 is 15, plus 3, 18. 5 times 4 is 20, plus the 1, 21. 1, 2, 3 places for the decimal. So it looks like my answer there is 2 185 thousandths. So 2.1852 and 185 thousandths. And we were dealing in centimeters, so centimeters square. Okay, so those are the notes for this lesson. And let's see, what do we need to look at next? Oh, no, I'm not done. That was area, and now we need to go on to perimeter. Okay, so perimeter. Let's go down here. We've only got 3 sides, so I'm just going to go ahead and add up all the sides. So I've got 2.3 is my base, and my 2 sides are 2.2. So when I'm adding, I keep the decimals lined up. 2.2, adding them. So 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Carry down that decimal. I've got 3 times 2 is 6. 2 plus 2 plus 2 is 6. And this is centimeters, not squared, because now we're measuring a linear, all in a line around the shape. And so that is just simply centimeters, not squared, not cubed. So that's my perimeter for the triangle. So we've got area for this triangle and perimeter for the triangle. And that is the end of the notes. So let's take a look at our practice problems for lesson 6.2. Practice problems. Okay, so I've got 3 problems here. Let's bring it up here. The first 2 are in frame now. You're going to find the perimeter and the area of all 3 of these figures. The first one being a square, the second one being a rectangle, and the third one down here is this triangle. And remember, you can pause, and if you're using a tablet or a cell phone, zoom in on any of these also. If you're doing this on a computer, that's probably not an option. Maybe it might be, depending on the software you're using. But you can pause at any time to look more closely at these problems. Okay, so now we're going to go ahead and solve them. Perimeter and area is what they're asking us to find. Perimeter and area. Okay, I'm doing both. So I'm going to start out with the square with area. All right, so first step is always to write the formula. Area equals, well, for a square, area equals side times side. All right, so area equals 3.1 of this is a side. It's a square, says so right there. So I know all the sides are 3. Oh, yeah, and I don't like that dot there when I'm dealing with decimals. Let me fix that. All right, 3 1/10 times 3 1/10. That is going to give me area. So I'm going to scratch it out over here real quick, because again, I don't know for sure what that is right in my head. So 3 1/10 times 3 1/10, 1 times 1, 1 times 3, 3 times 1, 3 times 3. So I got 1, 4, 9, and 2 decimal places. So wait, did I do that right? 1 times 1, 1 times 3, 3 times 1 is 3. Oh, no, I didn't. Something looked wrong. And 3 times 3 is 9. All right, so I've got 6, 9, 6, 1. All right, yeah, that's right. So 3 1/10 times 3 1/10 is 9 61/100, and we're dealing in centimeters. And this is the area, so it's centimeters cubed. So I'm going to underline this as area and my answer. Now, perimeter. Perimeter. Now that you know how to multiply decimals, you can do this one of 2 ways. I mean, you can add up 3 1/10 4 times, or you could just multiply 3 1/10 times 4. And that seems easier to me. Whoops. 3 1/10. So that's what I'm going to do. But you could do it either way. So 3 1/10 times 4 is going to give me the perimeter. 4 of 3 1/10, because there's 4 sides to it. 4 times 1 is 4. 4 times 3 is 12. 1 decimal place. And it's centimeters. It's perimeter, so not squared. Perimeter is 12 4/10. And that's the answer for the square. All right, now let's work with the rectangle. On the rectangle, for area for a rectangle equals length times width. That's our formula. Then we plug in the values that we know. We know what the length is. It's 3 8/10 times the width, 1 9/10. And again, I'm going to have to do a little scratch work here. So 3.8 times 1.9. And 9 times 8. Wait, did I get this right? Oh yeah, okay, 9 times, there we go. 9 times 8 is 72. 9 times 3 is 27 plus 7, so that gives me 34. Then 1 times 8 and 1 times 3, 2. 8 plus 4 is 12. 6, 7. And 2 places for my decimal. So 7 and 22 hundredths. So that equals 7 and 22 hundredths centimeters squared. This is area. All right, so 7 and 22 hundredths centimeters squared for my area. Now, for perimeter, I'm going to do 3 problems rather than add up for a column of 4 numbers. I just find that easier, but you can do it either way. So I've got 3.8 plus 3.8, 16, carry that decimal down, 6, 7, and then I've got 1.9 plus 1.9, it's 18, oops, kind of did a strange scratch there, there we go, 18 and 3, then add these two together, so I've got 7.6 and 3.8, 14, 10, 11, carry that down, and that's centimeters, and that is a linear all-in-one line measurement, so just simply centimeters. 11 and 4/10 centimeters is my perimeter. Okay, so that's how you work out finding the perimeter and area of that rectangle. All right, now last is our triangle. I hope this is, let me see if I can zoom in just a little bit more on that. Yeah, that's not too bad, huh? I know the tiny little numbers on that are hard to see. Okay, so here we go. For area, the formula for area is, we're dealing in decimals, so I'm going to write 1.5 base times height. Okay, so we can put those in parentheses like that. All right, so 0.5 times the base is 3 9/10, 3 9/10, and the height over here, it's kind of a weird little triangle. This is not my height along here, that's a side of the triangle, has to be perpendicular from the base. So my height, it might be hard to see, but it is yeah, okay, it is 9/10. So I've got 0.9 here for my height. All right, so I've got to do a little bit of scratch work to figure out what this math is here. So 3.9 times 0.9, 81, 27, 7. Was that right? Okay, let's see, is that an 8? Oh yeah, okay. So 35. And then I've got to get half of that, right? Okay, so then I've got 2 places for my decimal for these 2 numbers. And then I've got to still multiply that by 0.5. So 5 times 1 is 5, 5 times 5 is 25, 15, 16, 17, and 1, 2, 3 places here. So my area is 1 and 755 thousandths centimeters squared for area. Okay, let's circle that and underline area. All right, now we need to find perimeter. Try to keep this in frame here. All right, perimeter. For perimeter, we just have 3 sides to add up here. So I've got 5.1, 3.9, and 0.9. So that gives me 19. Keep the decimals all in a row. 9. And so now I've got, let's see, Oh, I see my problem. I took the 0.9 for my height. That's not right. I need this side here of 1.5 to add in there. Okay, I was checking my notes and it thought, okay, why am I not matching up? Did I make a mistake? Well, I certainly did. Don't you make that mistake when you're doing perimeter. Height is not your third number that you're adding up. Now's when this side that's marked 1.5 comes in. All right, so we've got 15. Bring down that decimal. 6, 7, and 10. And that's centimeters. And so the perimeter of that triangle is 10 and 5/10 centimeters. And that's your final answer for the triangle. Okay, so that is your practice problems. Let's take a look at your, let me back out here. Your worksheet. Well, it won't be nice and colorful like this one. It'll be in black and white. But it's all pretty much just like we did on the notes. You're going to be asked to find the perimeter and the area for each one of these shapes. And then there's just 2 word problems, and they're pretty straightforward. And then down at the bottom here, you're going to have to measure these shapes and yourself, and then figure out the perimeter and the area. So remember that you're measuring in metric. Use the centimeter side of your ruler. And when it says to the nearest tenth, remember there are 10 little tiny marks in the centimeters. Each one of those tiny little marks means a millimeter. So a centimeter is divided into tenths. So if it says measure to the nearest tenths, that means measure exactly. Okay, last part then is your exit ticket. Exit ticket can be extra practice, or possibly your teacher will use it for something else, and I won't be giving you the answer to them here. So you may pause.